Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. So today on the lift I have my 97 Jeep Wrangler. We're working on the front end here, and I've got some maintenance work that I'm doing, and it's ultimately going to involve installing a front locker. But I'm doing some maintenance work before I install the lift kit. I'm waiting on some parts for that to show up. I've got a lunchbox style locker that will replace the spider gears in the stock carrier. To install that requires pulling the axle shafts out. To pull the axle shafts out, we'll need to take the brakes off, take the hub off. I've got new brakes, new hub. I'm going to also take the knuckle off, not required for that bit of it, but I'm going to replace the ball joints, and I also have all new steering linkage as well. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is just original from 1997, so this is a combination of maintenance parts as well as upgrading and installing a locker. So if you're interested in any of this, stick around and we'll get started. All right, we'll start with the caliper. We'll just need to take loose and take out the slide pin bolts. Of course, your rotor may or may not come off that easily. Next, we're going to take off the hub assembly. The hub is held on by 3 bolts on the back side of the knuckle, and then of course on the front of the knuckle there's an axle shaft nut as well with a cotter pin. So we'll work on this. The hub bolts are a 12-point 13 millimeter, and if they've been on there a long time, you may need a breaker bar to get these to break loose. We'll see how tight these end up being. Okay, mine not too bad. Next we have the axle nut that's held in by a cotter pin. This hasn't been out in a long time. All right, so I used a hammer and a punch to get that cotter pin out. It hadn't been out in a very long time. And so there's our axle nut. We'll need the impact to get this off, so that'll be our next step. Most likely, if your hub has been on the knuckle and the backing plate for any length of time, certainly mine has, probably for close to 27 years, this is probably going to be fairly difficult to get off. You may also have to use a puller once you get it out. It may want to come out with the axle shaft as well. Sometimes rust builds up on the splines there inside the hub. So you just have to see how it comes out, or sometimes you can get it out a little bit and then knock the axle shaft back just a little bit and get it to break free from there. So I'm going to work on this, see if I can get it to break loose. Obviously, if you're hitting anything, wear safety glasses so you don't get a piece of shrapnel in your eye. Yep. So all you guys that live in rust-prone areas probably hate me right now that my hub came off pretty easily. There we go. Okay, time to start putting some things back together. So we're going to put our axle shaft back in with the new U-joints. So we'll slide this in. If you can, support the end of the axle as you slide it in so that it will go past the inner axle seal and you don't knock it out of place. The axle slides in, you can feel it. It should engage with the splines in the differential. Then we're going to put our hub back on. Get this pointed the right direction. I like using the CarQuest hub assemblies because I like the E-coating. Anything I can do to prevent rust and corrosion from building up on things, it's a nice additive. Also cleaned up the hub bolts. I'm going to reuse these. You can buy new ones if you like. but I put these on the wire wheel. I was able to clean up any of the rust that had built up on them. The 3 hub mounting bolts get torqued to 75 foot-pounds. Next, we have our axle nut. So there's a washer. I bought a replacement axle nut. Dorman sells a little kit with the washer, the nut, and the retainer. You could reuse the original if they're in good shape, but for a few bucks, mine were pretty rusty. The torque spec on this nut is 175 foot-pounds, which is pretty high. The easiest way to hold this so it doesn't spin is to take a breaker bar of some sort and go through the yoke by the U-joint, and that will help keep it from spinning. I'm going to step this up in increments. That's 100. 140. There we go, 175. Then take your retainer clip. I reused the little spring washer. Make sure this is lined up with the cotter pin hole. Okay, let's move on to the brakes. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to replace the pads and rotors. Though the pads themselves, I think the previous owner replaced these right before I purchased it. So the pads are essentially brand new, though they just basically pad slapped it and didn't turn the rotors or do anything. So I just want everything to be new since I'm working on everything. So we're going to pop the old brake pads off. We'll press in the caliper piston, and I'm also going to change the boots that the slide pins go through. They're not busted, but they're starting to get kind of old and brittle. Like I said, they're probably 27 years old. So I figured for a few extra bucks, Raybestos makes a little kit with the new boots, and they're not too hard to change. So all right, I'm going to press the piston back in. My tool is really set up for a dual piston caliper, but you can make this work no problem. There we go. Like I said, those pads were pretty much new, so I didn't have to press that piston in very far. Next, I'm going to change the boots that I talked about. These come out pretty easy. And kind of push the lip of the boot off. So that's the center sleeve. We'll save that. We're going to clean him up and reuse that. And then these boots, if you kind of fold them in, kind of get them break loose, they'll pop out. Then we'll do the same thing on this one. Slide that out. All right, going to take some brake grease and put it inside the boot so that the pin slides smoothly. Then I'm going to clean these two up with some brake cleaner, and we'll be ready to reassemble. This is a pretty simple process, but the trickiest bit is getting the new boot through the caliper. I found if you fold it a little bit, you can get it just started. Go, that pops into place. Do the same thing with the other one. Now we'll take the center sleeve. You can come in from whichever side is easier. Just have to get it started. And it will slide through. Alright. Of course, check and make sure that that slides smoothly. Okay, we're ready to put our pads into the caliper. Obviously, one side has these 3 tabs that goes into the piston. Make sure you're paying attention. There is a left and right to the pads because it has to do with this notch in the bottom and how that's going to hook onto the knuckle. So if you match up to what you're taking off, it will be self-explanatory. So that goes in like that. The upper slides in on these little spring clips and then kind of seats into the caliper with those notches. This can be a little bit more of a challenge, but still not too bad. So the caliper is loaded. Now we can put the rotor on. Me personally, I really like coated rotors as opposed to ones just with a painted hat or something like that. It's nice because the coating, these things are dipped, so it gets down inside the vanes as well. It's on the inside of the hat. So it's a coating, anti-rust coating that goes everywhere. And it's nice if you get bare steel rotors, they're coated with a anti-rust oil that you have to clean off, obviously before you put the brakes together. I wipe these down with some brake cleaner, but they are as clean as they can be because that anti-rust oil is not needed since they are a coated rotor. That anti-rust oil is just so they don't develop surface rust while it's in the bag. I like to use a lug nut just to hold our rotor in place. Okay, I moved you to a slightly different angle. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Make sure the slide pins are pushed back. Like I said, if you can see that, the notches in the brake pads are on the bottom and they fit onto the lip of the knuckle where the caliper sort of mounting bracket is. Then we have our 2 caliper slide pin bolts that will go through here. I'm going to put a little brake grease on these as well and then slide them through. And then the torque spec for these bolts is 11 foot-pounds, which is not very much, so don't go crazy. There we go. And there we go. Brakes installed.